Right.
Well, actually, we
Okay,
have an even newer member.
so I think I'm okay now.
Okay, yay.
I made the mistake of clicking on the link that I sent to all of you people because that's what was put on my calendar. So now I just went directly into Zoom and did it that way. All right, so let us begin at the beginning. This is 15-minute Photoshop, and the purpose of it, well, let me check and make sure I can share my screen. Yeah, it's going to let me. So, okay, I won't share it. Just, are you seeing my screen or no?
No, we still see you.
All right, I won't use it just yet. So I'm going to do 15 minutes of presentation on this, and hold your questions, but make a little note to yourself. And then we're going to do 15 minutes of Q&A on it. And I'm going to start on layers at the beginning. And tomorrow I will send out a list of about 5 links, one of which will be this recording, so you can go through it at your own pace. And the second part of it will be a list of other links by other people that have done things like Photoshop layers for photographers. They've done some for Photoshop layers just in general. Adobe puts out one in their help section, and it's pretty awful. And I have found most things that Adobe offers are pretty poor. But if you have questions about anything as you're using Photoshop, Google is the best way to do it. Just Google Photoshop frozen on layer 1 or whatever your question is. And I have found Google to do amazing things. So keep that in mind. All right. So this is going to be in small courses, and I am going to share my screen right now. So it's going to be like find French food. We're going to do it in small courses. And you can see my screen, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you're looking at are layers, and you can see, can you see my cursor okay on the right-hand side?
Yes.
Okay. I have a very high resolution screen, so some of the words may look tiny to you, but hopefully they will work out. So what you can see is 4 layers over here. And each of those 4 layers is created very, very simply. And just to give you something to keep in mind is that anytime you have a Photoshop window open and you drag a photograph in here, it will automatically put it on a separate layer. So typically we start off with, and I'm going to show you something right now if you don't know, is that see these little eyeballs next to the layers? You can just click on those and drag them up, and now they're gone. It just closed them temporarily, and it just shows you the white background that I have. And so now we're going to open up one layer, and this is the blue. And all layers really is it's stacking your photographs. If you want to put type in there, you can put that in there. You can put all types of layers. Could be a mask is a layer. Everything is just stacked. And you only see what's on top if it covers a certain area. So this blue only covers this area. If I'm to turn off this white down below, the rest of it is, these little squares are transparency. That just means that there's nothing there. But if I turn the white back on, and you always want to start basically with a white background, then you'll see your image, and then I can start looking at the other layers. And I just duplicated those from each other. So I'm going to show you something first. That is, we've got all these layers, and then I'm going to come over here. Let me move this a little bit for myself. And I'm going to take this yellow layer. And if you can see up in here, it says opacity.
Mhm.
And under opacity, I can click this little pull down. And then I can drag that and take a look at what's happening to the yellow. The yellow's gotten much lighter. And if I keep it at about 50%, anything that overlaps with the blue is actually green now. So you can change the transparency of things if you wanted to have less impact. And I'm going to show you some things specifically about photographs, but for now, I'm just trying to tell you what layers can do. Let's do the same thing with the red. I'm going to go to the red, and I'm going to pull that down. And that's at 50%. Now we've turned the red into pink and orange. So you can change things into any color, any mix of colors by adding colors on top of each other, which is probably something rare we do for photographs. But it's just to show you what's happening is that this red layer, you can see through it partially onto the yellow and it turned orange. You can see through the yellow and partially and it turned green down below because it's over the blue. So we can see through the layers into something else. Now, if I move this red layer, I'm going to go over here to the left, and that's the move tool, those crosses, if you're not familiar with Photoshop. And I am currently on the red layer over here to the right because it's highlighted. And I can move that down. And now what happens to the blue is it turns purple because that layer is half transparent. And it's going to affect how that works. And there are lots of practical reasons. I'm not going to talk about that in this class, but in future ones, I will use transparency in a Photoshop photography file that you'll find, or you'll see the reasons for it. This is just demonstrating what you can do in Photoshop. Now I'm going to do something else here. You come over to this layer, and every layer will have a series of options. You see this little tiny button up here? This gives you a ton of options. I can duplicate the layer. I can delete it. I can export it as a PNG if I wanted to. We won't talk about groups, so let's just forget about that. You can do a lot of things, and you can even merge all of these together if we wanted to into one file.
Eric, can you go back to where that button is?
It's just to the right. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to ask. Does everybody have this layers panel open?
Yes.
I can see it, but I missed where you clicked.
In the upper right of the next to
Okay,
layers.
on the layers line.
Yeah, there's a little grouping. You can also get to it by double clicking on this. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the right way. You can right click and get the same thing. You can right click on the layer and get that same group of information. So you can do duplicate it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to duplicate the red layer, and I'm just going to click on it, and it's going to ask me, you're going to duplicate it. I can call it something if I want to. I'm going to call it duplicate red. I'll say okay. And it duplicated it, and it duplicated right on top of the other one in the exact position. So now I need to go get my move tool up here, which I already was on, but I want to show you. And now you have a duplicate layer. The other thing that you can do, so that's either this little button up here, or it's a right click to get all those options. And don't worry about what those options are so much right now. And then the next thing is you can double click on the name, and I could change that if I wanted to, or if I didn't do it when that little box came up, like this one already has a name associated, I can double click on the name and say Red 1, that's the first one. And then you just click off of it and it's there. And by the way, if you ever put type in an image, the type will automatically put the name of what type you started with. So if you're going to put a title on it that said Fred's birthday would show up on the layer title automatically. You don't have to do anything. A lot of these things are going to be covered in the some of the links I'm going to send you, so keep that in mind. All right, then I'm going to double click, and this time it gives you a new set of options over here. And this is bevel and emboss, stroke, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Drop shadow is something that we may actually use. So I just clicked on drop shadow, and it put a drop shadow underneath here. But let me cancel that, because I'm actually going to put it on the blue layer because we can see it more easily. I'll move the blue layer up, and I'm just going to click drop shadow, and it created a shadow down there. You can control that shadow, but you have to double click on that little panel that says drop shadow. And I can change the opacity of shadows. I can do how far away it is from the blue layer. I can do the size, which really means how soft it is or how hard it is. So there's a tremendous number of things you can do. And over here, if you look at the blue layer, underneath it says effects, and it says drop shadow. So I have a drop shadow. If I want to get rid of that drop shadow, I just click on it and I can drag it to the trash can at the bottom. And now it's gone. This meeting will end in 10 minutes. Wow. Okay. I shouldn't have used the scheduler, but nevertheless, I did. Okay. So those are the basics that I wanted to show you just to get you at that point. Now we're going to look at something different. So you may recognize this image. This is an image I had submitted, and it won a couple of things here and there. Once again, I'm going to go over to the layers, and I'm going to close all of these layers. And now you see the original layer, but I've modified it slightly because her arm is messed up and her legs are messed up. That means that I've modified it in some way. And what I did was actually her arm was sticking out this way. And so I cut it here, rotated it, and made it at a 90-degree angle. And so that's why it looks kind of funky. And then I took a different photo and put it on top of that, different photo of the same scene. And so that's what it looks like. I often get asked how to add a signature to a photograph. And that's so simple. You just choose some type, and I'm going to do that right now. I'll hit the type key, which is the T on the left-hand toolbar, and then it gives you a little cursor. And down here, I'm just going to put something there. And now I've got type in there, and I always end up putting it, in this case, it's 48 point, which tells you up here the size of the type. And you can adjust that to whatever you need by highlighting it and changing it to 36, et cetera, et cetera. But I always end up putting it in the bottom right, and I always put it in about an inch above and an inch either side. In case this was to be framed, you could still see my lovely signature. And that's really all there is to it. You now have a signature in your file. And you can choose any up here at the top. This has the type that's already loaded in your computer. I have a lot of type in my computer because I do it for a living, but this is all typefaces that I could use. I even have foreign language fonts as well. And whatever you're hovered over is what it will put it in as. So I could even put it in as unusual, weird characters, wingdings. Anyway, the point being is that it will allow me to put in a signature. Now I'm going to go back and I will show you the layers as I did them. So since the woman is on the top layer, she's going to hide some things. So she's going to hide part of the musical note. And I just made that in Photoshop. And so she's hiding the bottom of that musical note. If I turn her off, you can see where it actually comes into the hat. I turn her back on and it's now covered up. And the lines are simply that. They are lines. There's a tool over on the left-hand side right here called lines. And it allows you to, you click on that, it's called the line tool, and I can make a line. I hold down the shift key and I drag it across. And I can make them any color I want. I can do whatever I want with it. And I'm going to get rid of that. And by the way, if this turns us off, then I will send everybody an invitation to a new meeting, which I'm sorry, but I guess we took a while getting going here. And here are the rest of the lines that are in the file. And that's the whole file. It's not really, it's a bunch of layers. It may look like several layers to you, but it's a fairly simple file. And if I wanted to, I could take all of these lines and I selected them all. So all I did was select the first one and the last one, and I hit shift and it put them all together. And then I can say merge shapes, because a line is called a shape. And now it's only on one layer. And they're all together on one layer. And I can turn that off. So that way I could move it all as one if I wanted to. If I didn't like the position, I'm going to hit my favorite key, Control Z, to put it back where it was. And so that's the using a signature, and that's using how the layers work together and how you can merge layers. Let's see. I'm going to do one last thing here before we take questions. So I have the word good night here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here. This is a selection tool in the upper left, that box. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to click on part of the type, the yellow portion of the type. And then I'm going to go back up to the top. And I'm going to hit the word select in the pull down and similar.
Ooh.
And that selected all of the type. Now I'm going to go to a different layer, and this happens to be Rick Whitaker's winning image. And I'm going to do select inverse. So now this selection is not on the type anymore. It's actually on the photograph. And I'm going to hit delete. Looks like nothing's changed. But if I go over here and turn off good night, it says good night. And his image is in the word good night. Okay, let's go to questions if you have them, and I can go back and repeat some things as well.
Eric, what was the point of the first layer in the musical woman image? Because you had the top layer look like the same image but complete, whereas the bottom layer looked like it had some artifacts in it that you didn't want.
Yeah, and the reason I have a separate layer, I could turn this one on the bottom off, but I lose my background. See what happened? I lose the wall. And so I added her, and the reason I did was I had to extend her legs down here because I didn't have enough of her legs to make it interesting. So
Gotcha.
all I did was took this. Let's see, I'll do it a different way. I made a selection, and then I said Control T, which is a transform. And then I hit Shift, and now I can make her dress longer. So that was a simple way of me getting her legs longer. Was I did that, but I did it to her legs in the case of the one we're looking at. But just now I decided to just do her dress to extend it. But it's pretty simple to do, just a few commands that you need to know. And then I do
Few out of
control.
thousands.
Does that make sense, Tim?
Yes, thank you.